Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Shawna. Thanks a lot for spending your evening to join our program and share your amazing journey, amazing stories, and inspiring stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listener everywhere, we want to say thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Since you haven't been to my country, as an open invitation, now you have a new friend, new family. If you decided to travel to Vietnam, you let me know, and I'll make time to take you around, show you how beautiful our country and the people here, and the food, like you say earlier, also.
That sounds wonderful. I will certainly, hopefully, take you up on that one day.
Alrighty. And you've been traveled the world. You've been happy people to see how to get the best version of themselves, right? In our culture, it's very honored if we can have you to share a little bit to our audience who you are and the works you are doing. Would you please do that honor for us?
Absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Dr. Shawna Pandya. I am Canada's first commercial female astronaut. I am also an emergency physician. I'm an aquanaut, a 2-time aquanaut, and I hold a number of roles with the institute that I am flying to space with. I am the director of the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences Space Medicine Group. I also am the chief instructor for our space medicine course at IIAS. And most recently, I am the executive director of our Flight Opportunities Program. This is the program through which we set the curriculum, training standards, qualifications, and research priorities for those who would fly as research astronauts at the International Institute for Astronautical Sciences.
Wow, Shawna. You have an amazing journey in 2021. Canada named you as one of the 100 most powerful women in Canada also. And you introduced your stories and your journey to us less than 60 seconds. And that's not fair for our audience. So we are going to travel time. We are going to examine how all the dots connected until today. How does that sound to you?
That sounds really great.
Alrighty. So, when I was little, I grew up in the communities super poor in the middle of the country. Okay, so one night we have electricity. The night or two we didn't have electricity. So the only entertainment for me at night is to see the moon when it arises, and then we can see how bright it is in the neighborhood, right? So when you grow up, when you grow up, what was your first dream about the future works, the future things that Shawna is going to do in her life?
You know, I was a kid who spent a lot of time outside. I did a lot of camping. I did a lot of camping with my family. I did a lot of camping through Girl Guides, and I did outdoor education as well. So I was privy to these beautiful starry nightscapes, these beautiful vistas of gleaming stars, and I was really inspired by that, and I thought, I want to be there. I want to be amongst the stars. And so that was kind of the first inspiration, just looking at the night sky and being outside. And then I was a child growing up in the 90s when Canada's first female astronaut, Dr. Roberta Bondar, flew to space. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are people who live and work in space, and Canadian women can do that. I could potentially do that someday. And so I thought, well, to be like Dr. Bondar, I need to do what she does. And so she's a neuroscientist, a physician, and an astronaut. So I thought, I will go study neuroscience, become a physician, and then go be an astronaut. And from a young age, I was really, struck by everything space. All of the homework I turned in would be related to being an astronaut. I knew even in high school that I would be studying neuroscience and pursuing medicine. So from a young age, that dream was very much alive.
Wow. So how could you keep that curiosity about space, about the skies, about the stars up there for so long since kids?
In addition to being outside, I would just pay attention to the news and the discoveries. So, when there was a new discovery with, the latest Mars rover that had landed, I would beg my parents to buy that newspaper headline. I remember when I was 10, there was a USA Today headline with potential evidence of microbial life on Mars. And I, just begged my parents, can you buy that for me, please? Or we were on a camping trip and we were at a souvenir shop, and I saw this little pocket astronomy guide about the planets and the night sky, and I said, oh my gosh, I have to read that. And so the interest was finding every bit of information I could find, going to the library and constantly checking out books on the night sky, the universe, what we know about our universe and what we don't know. And then later on, when I got into my neuroscience degree, I would take electives in quantum physics and astrophysics just to keep that passion alive.
Wow. And so bring me to your childhood when you have a lot of, your friends, because the dream that you've been having is rare to many people. So, so how was your friends or the people next to you saying about, about that dream, and how did they play with you?
Yeah, I was a very studious child. I read a lot. When I was about 7, my mom was listening to a radio phone-in show, and they had a child psychologist on, and it was about getting your kids to read more. And most parents were phoning in to say, how can I get my kid to read more? And my mom phoned in, and she said, my kid reads too much. What do I do? I was more interested in reading books than I was with playing. But that meant I just had a very, very close circle of friends. And so the ones, my best friend today is the same best friend I had since I was 11 years old, so she's known the dream since, we were very, very young. And at the same time, even as a kid, when folks say, well, that's too hard, you can't do it. And literally other kids would say, well, you need to be smarter than you are, even if I had the top grades in the class. At a young age what not to listen to because you believe in your own dream so much.
Wow. So in your life, who inspired you the most?
I think aside from having astronauts and heroes to look up to, I think looking at my own parents and the example that they set with their work ethic, to this day, I like to say that, there's different concepts of having a good work ethic. And so my parents are first generation immigrants. They immigrated from India with all of their belongings packed up in 2 suitcases when they came over in the 80s. And, there's this notion that if you're an immigrant in a new country, you have to work not just hard, but work immigrant hard. And I would say looking at my parents, it was a level beyond that. They worked not just immigrant hard, but Pandya hard, because to this day, they worked very, very long hours. My dad was setting up his physiotherapy practice in a brand new country. So for us, it was just totally normal that the workday was 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. We didn't realize that other people didn't work those hours until I went to medical school. And I was actually interviewing for a surgical subspecialty, which famously has very long hours. And they were asking me what I thought about those long hours. And I was telling them that story, and they said, oh, even we don't keep those hours. So, it was just ingrained in me to work very hard from a young age.
Beautiful. My youngest daughter, wanted to ask you this question, okay?
Yeah.
And she say, okay, out of all the wisdom that you have in life, if you can pick one piece of wisdom, either from your mom or your dad, to that you still remember, you still living up with up until today, what would that piece of wisdom is and why?
Oh, okay, that is such a good question, Tyler. That's a really wonderful question. And I'm going to share 2 answers, one from my mom, one from my dad. So my mom, she's just known for working very, very hard. Like I would still say out of all of us, she probably works the hardest. And so she just says, if she feels like one of us is slowing down, she just says, keep moving. And, no matter how tired I am, how much I've worked, when when I get too tired, I just think of that. Keep moving. You just have one more step to go. You can always do one more step. So I remember that from my mom. And then my dad, he's very practical. So he says, when you push a button, make sure it has its intended effect. And it was something he was telling me when I was younger, because I meant to close one of our garage doors but pushed the wrong button and didn't double check. But ever since then, I think about that. When I have an action that has consequences, it's really important that I check and follow up that my intended action had the intended consequences. And especially in medicine, especially in spaceflight, where lives can be on the line, it's really, really important.
Wow. And you have been pushing many buttons. You have been taking many one more step, like your mom's advice and your dad advice is right. So on your missions, there's a lot of challenges in there, and what values along the way that change your belief and that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, I think there's this very famous quote out there that says success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to go on that counts. And so when I started my journey in medicine, I had a big interest in surgery. I loved brains. I started off training in neurosurgery. I did that for 3 years. And then I realized that in doing so, I had put all of my space love by the wayside. And I just, it was changing my course, and it didn't feel right. And so it took a lot to course correct and to change my trajectory. But it was also the first time that I didn't set out to do what I said I would since a very young age. So it felt like a failure. And then the more, it took over a year to come to terms with, I am doing something very different from what I said I would do from a very young age. And in reviewing and reflecting on how my new course would get me closer to space and have me working on space medicine and human spaceflight, I really thought about that quote because I realized that we need to stop thinking about success and failure as absolutes, as opposite ends of the spectrum, because from every success, it's still not perfect. There's something we can learn. And from every failure, it doesn't mean that we cannot go on. There's something to learn from it. So rather than thinking of success and failure as two opposite ends of the spectrum, we need to think of them as same sides of the coin, and that there is something to be learned in every instance, because success isn't always pretty and success isn't always perfect. And failure can be a beautiful teacher if we let it.
So what things you want them, the people who want to follow your path, not to romanticize about that path, so that they can have the reality checked, and like your father said, push the right button with the consequence?
Yeah, I think for those who want to follow in my footsteps, something I learned about through this whole journey is resilience, psychological resilience. And so this concept of mental fortitude, not giving up when the going's tough, or bouncing back from failure when you really wanted to be successful. And there's lots of different models of what it takes to have this grit, this stick-to-itiveness. But the one I ascribe to breaks psychological resilience down to these key components, including positive self-talk, telling yourself that you have this, positive social support, so having good people around you that can help uplift you and support you, engaging in mental rehearsal. So we talk about visualization in sports and imagining yourself to be successful, but when you're dealing in high-risk operational scenarios like medicine, like spaceflight, you also need to be prepared for the worst-case scenarios. So rehearsing both the best case outcomes and the worst case outcomes. So you're prepared when that comes. And then impulse control. So when the going gets tough, not just giving up, but saying, okay, I'm going to go on. I'm going to keep moving. And then finally, not just viewing monumental tasks as a journey of 1,000 miles, but breaking it down into achievable tasks. So breaking things down into bite-sized pieces.
Like your mom say, one step at a time.
Exactly, keep moving.
Alrighty. So when are you going to the space in 2026?
As early as 2026, so I will be flying with Virgin Galactic on a research mission, and we are waiting. I like to say we're waiting for Virgin to build us a new spacecraft. So they are building their new Delta class of a suborbital spacecraft, and that is on track to roll out as early as next year. So they have to go through internal testing, uncrewed flights, and then finally research flights. So it can be as early as next year, but as we stay in the space world, we have to be ready for anything.
Yeah, exciting for you. So if you travel to the space and you have a chance to send your word out, equally echoing onto the giant galaxy out there, and later on, like million years later, people on Earth will be hearing those kind of words from Shawna, right? For example, like that. Assuming that case, what kind of message are you going to send out to the space?
That's a wonderful, yeah, not out to space. I would say this, that's a wonderful question. If I was sending out a message to the cosmos, I would simply say we are here, just to let the rest of the cosmos know that we are sentient, we are humans, we've made it at least a little step further than our cradle, and just to know that there is life elsewhere in the universe.
Beautiful, beautiful. Earlier in this conversation, you mentioned about the word thinking. Okay, and that is our passion in this project, is to help people to unveil the secret of thinking. How, because there's so many things that distracting our thinking these days, so many noises out there. So Shawna, how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
That's a wonderful question. So, through my work, I'm surrounded by incredible people who come from diverse backgrounds with really unique ways of thinking. I work with engineers, I work with physicians, I work with scientists, I work with pilots, and everyone brings their own unique way of thinking to operational scenarios, to problem solving. And so for me, I keep learning by surrounding myself by very accomplished people, because I honestly feel, given the teammates I'm surrounded by, that I need to do more with my life, because everyone is just so high achieving, and there's wonderful folks to learn from, because their way of solving a problem is completely different from how I might look at and solve the same problem.
Mm. And then those are amazing folks who also very selective in the people in their circle. So what do you do in order for you to stay relevant in that circle?
Yeah, I think it's knowing that being confident in my enough in my own abilities, confident in my knowledge of space and human space flight and space medicine, and knowing that I bring a certain filter and a certain flavor of problem solving, but also realizing I owe it to my team to be the best I can at my own particular expertise. So that means I'm also constantly learning, constantly reading the latest science and space medicine. It's constantly changing, and also bringing that knowledge back to them.
We have 2-3 minutes left for this conversation. Okay, is that okay if I can ask one last question?
Yeah, sure.
All righty. Because this time we're going to travel time back onto the past one last time, okay? And so between seeing your parents at the first time coming to the Canada, or seeing yourself when you were outside and looking to the sky back then, which one do you want us to pick the scenario, so that we can ask the question after that?
So you want me to pick between my parents seeing the night sky or myself seeing the night sky?
Your parents first came to the Canada, or when you were young and see the night sky. Which one you want to pick, so that I'll ask the question from there?
So I'll pick my parents.
Okay, right. So you and me now travel time together to see your parents back then, and probably they have yet have you back then also, okay? And then you are going to tell them that you are their daughter, and then you are going to tell them that about your amazing journey ahead of time. And what would you tell them?
That's such a powerful question. I get emotional even thinking about it, and I would simply say thank you, because I would not be here without everything that they'd done for me, all of the sacrifice. They've left their family behind, and it was a different time. We don't have back in the 80s when they moved here, they didn't have the instant connectivity that the internet affords. It was long distance calls and letters, and so I would simply say thank you.
Wow, Shawna, I want to say thank you for you being so generous to come into our program, sharing your journey, sharing and emotional conversation also in here, and for helping other people to adjust, adapt, and thrive in pressure. And I think it's important for us to learn and grow. And your lessons and the way that you show other people to do is really help us to get into the next level that we could become. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your beautifully thought out and insightful questions. This was really wonderful to be a part of.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful evening, and say hello to your family for us, please.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.